meeting of the MSAD 49 Board of School Directors to order. Roll call. Sharp. Here. Booth here. Brown Woods. Beverly. Here. Davis Folsom. Dumont. Cassie. Here. Hussey. Here. Knowles.
Here.
Lambert. Fisher. White. And Logan. Martin Lincoln. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry, sir, before you begin, can you just state your name?
Testing. Okay. I'm David Hoagland. I teach elementary band here in the district at Albion, Benton, and Clinton. And can I be heard? Am I being heard? It sounds super loud to me. Okay. I came to draw the board's attention to some really recently released information about COVID vaccines for young people. Some of them just released in the last couple of days. And I have, if you want notes to this, 3 articles I'll refer to this. The references are on a piece of paper here that I have copies of. You can get a copy if you'd like. This week, the Associated Press put out an article about the Scandinavian countries. That a number of them have stopped vaccinating using the Moderna vaccine for young people because of cases of inflammation of the heart and the muscles around the heart. Not that I know much about it at all, but it's myocarditis and pericarditis. And a tiny excerpt from that article says that Sweden stopped the use of Moderna for recipients under the age of 30, and Denmark is not offering Moderna to anybody under the age of 18, and Norway is urging people under the age of 30 to get the Pfizer vaccine instead. But the CDC website, just to quote them, that they do acknowledge cases of myocarditis by both the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine, and saying that it especially occurs in males, adolescent males, and young adults. And it more often occurs after the second dose, usually within several days after vaccination. That helps. Did anybody hear any of that? So that was an excerpt from the CDC website where they're acknowledging the myocarditis and pericarditis in young adults, especially young males. And that's one of two things that recently has been highlighted in the news. The other item is cautions about COVID vaccines related to menstrual cycle irregularities. The NIH, National Institute of Health, has just announced, or fairly recently announced, grants of $1.6 million total to be done by Boston University and other universities on the effects of COVID vaccines on menstrual cycle irregularities. Short excerpt. They said on the NIH website that some women have reported experiencing irregular or missing menstrual periods, bleeding heavier than usual, other menstrual changes, and the studies will research their connection to the COVID-19 vaccinations. And since that's something related to the reproductive system, it does bring to mind that a Pfizer study in Japan showed a great concentration of the lipid nanoparticles that deliver the vaccine. They found a concentration of those particles in ovaries, and a study by Moderna showed some reduced fertility. So I just think it's incumbent on the board to be a good example to our students and our community of practicing science and civics the way we teach them. And we need to correct a common phrase about following the science and remind our students that there's no such thing as the science. Science is not one set of data, but it is a methodology which relies on debate and challenging prevailing theories. And in terms of civics, we need to remind our students that our government, constitutional republic, relies on citizenry that is encouraged to question the government and hold government agencies accountable for following the scientific method, not simply presenting one set of data and asking the public to follow that. And as I have pointed out here, the vaccine companies themselves have seen these results. And so the risk-benefit analysis should be very different for an older person and a very young person, and should be very different for an older person with health troubles and a younger, healthy person. So I think before we encourage our students to get vaccines, or before we facilitate a vaccine clinic for them, I think it's incumbent upon the board to do some homework and say, is there a different risk-benefit analysis for young people? There are many, many, many scientists who would say, with data, who would say, you might want to get the vaccine if you're older. If you're young and healthy, the vanishingly rare chance of getting serious problems from the disease is less rare than, it's more rare than the risks of such things as I've mentioned here. The pericarditis, myocarditis, menstrual irregularities may be rare. Are they as vanishingly rare as the possibility of a young, healthy person getting the disease and getting harmed by the disease? Many, many scientists have said, no, the risk-benefit analysis is different for young people. So I would just bring your attention to those things. I have copies of the articles I mentioned from the website, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Is there anyone else in the public who would like to address the board?
Me again. I won't drop the mic this time. I have a whole list here that I want to talk about, but unfortunately I'm not going to because the last time it didn't make a difference what we had to say. So I do to ask our administration to start following guidelines or what they want to put out. I feel like our staff has nothing to go on from our administration. We don't have any leadership in our administration. As of right now, I got a call for my child that has to be out for 10 days. Ridiculous. If this was looked into a little bit more, it would be made to realize that what she was sent home for was not the real reason. I could keep going on that, I'm not going to. What it came out to be was that our administration is handing it down to somebody else, which should not be. The principals of our schools should have authority over somebody else. From the principals of our schools, if we get nowhere from there, we're supposed to look at our superintendent and our assistant superintendent. Unfortunately, myself, and I know a bunch of other parents in this district that are not here, so I'm speaking for them, feel like we have no administration and no superintendent and no assistant superintendent to go to with our problems. Everybody gets bounced back and forth to where you should go to. It's go here, wait, go back there, wait, go back there. Nope, that's their problem. Nope, that's their job. When is enough enough? We need leadership in this school district, and we don't have any. Our school district has gone extremely downhill, and when is enough enough? And when is our staff and our administration going to stand up for these students? These students have had enough, the parents have had enough, and it's time for somebody to do something.
Is there anyone else? As a reminder, can you please state your name? Thank you.
Hi, sorry I'm late, parent-teacher conferences. I'm Heather Hodgson. I teach here grade 7 math at Washington High School, and I absolutely love being a bulldog. I really do. I won't share my vaccine status. It's really up to, am I sick or am I healthy? And if I have symptoms, honestly, this COVID thing has been a big scare. And if I have any symptoms, I'll stay home. I'm a responsible adult, and I care about my students. I care about people I work with. I recently was told from HR that I was a close contact. And it was kind of confusing because I was told I was a close contact on September 17th, but the student had tested positive on the 22nd. So I had taught and was not quarantined for six days in my mind. I'm a math teacher, and that's kind of how it went. So I was a little confused and shocked because they told me the last period of the day and asked me to leave the building after teaching all day. Again, no symptoms, and I agreed. I didn't make a fuss. I want to be healthy and good for my students. I had a COVID-19 test Monday, and the results rapidly came back, said I was negative. And at the same time, I just wanted to make sure I was negative, so I took the 2 to 3 day test as well, and it came back as negative. And I begged HR to come back to school because I was remote teaching to my students because it's not their fault. This is really not their fault, and it's not my fault either. But I had no symptoms, and I proved that I was negative twice from Walgreens test, but because I'm not in the pool testing, I would really appreciate if things would be revised or looked at again to be more fair, whether we're sick or not based on vaccination or are you part of a pool test. I don't know the logistics behind all this, but I know whether I'm healthy or not, and I really want the best again for our community and our students. And forward to the day where we don't have to wear masks and I can really focus on teaching and feeling like I don't have to breathe back in my own air from teaching the same material several times a day. I really love my job and I love this community. And I really hope that's clear. So thank you so much for your time.
Is there anyone else before we move on? Okay, thank you. Moving on to old business, there is none. New business, CHA presentation.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here tonight. I was asked to come here by the building committee to update you on the work that they have done to date on the Fairfield replacement project. So what I'm going to do is take you through sort of a recap of all the steps that the committee work has led us through, and then sort of remind you where we are in the overall process of the project. And then I can answer some questions if there are any questions, and then I believe Roberta has a motion for the board. So there is some voting to happen this evening. So let's start with what the charge was of the building committee. So the building committee was charged with, by the school board, was charged with exploring consolidation options for the elementary schools here in MSAD 49. They were also charged by the Department of Education to start searching for a site for a potential new project. That can be a very long process, so the Department of Education wanted the building committee to get started on that so that that can happen concurrently with the explorations for consolidation. So as far as the consolidation options went, we did previously, I updated the board on the facility report that we did of the existing conditions of the existing buildings. And it was determined that Benton is actually in very good condition. It has substantial life left in it in terms of the academic suitability of the building, the lifespan of the systems and the building itself. So we looked at that to remain part of the community and the school district. We looked at options to expand the building, but realistically that building is, although it's academically very well designed, it is very difficult to add on to in large part because there are site constrictions and also the way that the building is sort of constructed in terms of its nucleus function. It's difficult, and the roof lines, et cetera, it's difficult to logically add on to that building. So we also looked at reusing that building in a different way. When in conversations with the Department of Education and with the school district and with the building committee, we looked at reloading Benton with smaller children, with the pre-K through 2 age range. And that does a couple of things. One of the issues with the way Benton is used right now is that it has very small classrooms, 600 to 700 square foot classrooms. And that's difficult for the bigger kids. It's difficult for the 6th graders, the 5th and 6th graders. So it seems appropriate to look at it as a pre-K2 building. And then we would potentially look at a new building that would house grades 3 through 6. So one of the things that we look at, and I can read these numbers to you because this is a dense graph, but the school district had an enrollment protection done for 10 years out, so 2030 we're looking at. And those enrollment projections tell us that we're looking at about 505 students in the pre-K through 2 age range of the district, and 550 students in the grades 3 through 6 age range. So that would mean that we'd be looking at loading Benton with about 500 students. if you know how Benton was originally designed, it was designed for about 800 at the time. I think it's had as many as 1,000 students in it. So 500 is a really nice number. What that allows us to do is put about 16 kids in the classrooms. The other thing that it allows us to do is look at Benton in a way that we can sort of restructure it a little bit to be more appropriate for the pre-K and K grade levels. So one of the things that's fantastic about Benton is that a number of the classrooms in the building have operable partitions in them, which means that if we pull those operable partitions back, or we pull them out, that means that we can essentially combine two 600 square foot classrooms to make a singular 1,200 square foot classroom, which is perfect for pre-K and K. So that means that we can get, and we did reloading diagrams and we did reloading spreadsheets to demonstrate that we can very comfortably get the pre-K through second grade population into Benton with reasonable class sizes of about 16 per class. It also allows us to continue to have a 3-year-old childcare program in that building. So there's space there for a 3-year-old childcare program. It also allows us to continue to have resource spaces, special ed spaces, reuse all of the existing library, gymnasium, cafeteria, all of those spaces stay the same. And it's a really nice solution, very academic, as I said, academically suitable, appropriate for that younger grade level. So you can see that what we do is we have some 1,200 square foot classrooms for pre-K, some smaller classrooms for pre-K. What we've looked at in terms of pre-K projections is right now there's only about 67 kids in pre-K right in the district, but that's largely because of space limitation in the existing buildings. We can open that up in the Benton school so that we can offer pre-K to 80 to 100% of the kindergarten projected enrollment. So that means that we can have a building that can support the projected enrollment for kindergarten and that same number of students in pre-K. And that gets us to about 500 students plus 2,000 square foot spaces for the 3-year-old childcare program. So that's the reload of Benton that gives us the opportunity to look at a new building that would be grades 3 through 6. As far as the site search is considered, we take that 550 students that are projected for grades 3 through 6, and we know based on the metrics that the Department of Education uses for square foot per student, that that's potentially going to pan out to about a 77,000 square foot new building with a footprint of, we assume that there'll be some first floor, some second floor classrooms. So we're looking at a first floor footprint of about 50,000 square feet. The Department of Education also has a metric that we use to establish what we're looking for a site size. It's 20 acres for an elementary school plus 1 acre for every 100 students. So 20 acres plus 5.5 acres for the 550 students. So we're looking for a site that's about 25 to 26 acres. So we start there, and then we looked at the nucleus, the sort of centroid of the school district, and we said we're looking for 20 plus acres in the Fairfield-Benton area. That's the centroid of the district. And the building committee came up with a list of criteria that this site had to meet. It had to have 3-phase power. It had to have water utilities. It had to have sewer utilities. It had to be a safe site, so it couldn't be right next to a railroad or under a highway or something like that, right? They had some criteria for how we would evaluate these sites. So we discovered that there are about 19 sites in the Fairfield-Benton area that are 20+ acres, between 20 and 26 acres or more. And then we went through and evaluated them. We used the criteria that was developed by the building committee to determine that there were 10 sites that had utilities and were considered safe. And there was one site that was currently owned by the district already. There's a parcel of land that's adjacent to the high school. So we go through and we went through with the building committee and established all of the different sites. The ones in yellow were eliminated because of proximity to railroads, like I said, or because of lack of utilities, or because of cost of development. Some of them didn't have good access from existing roadways. Others didn't have, they might have had power and water but not sewer, or the cost to extend sewer would have been exorbitantly expensive. And then, as I mentioned, there was a site that's adjacent to the high school. That site is about 20 acres, however, it has a substantial amount of wetlands on it, setback requirements from protected lands, and that ends up with about 5.5 acres of developable land. So that's not going to work for us because we need more than 5 acres to develop on. But with all the wetlands and the development issues on that site, we end up with about 5.5 acres. The Department of Education likes us in terms of site selection. They really like school districts to look at what they call magnet sites, which are sites that are connected to existing school districts, or existing school buildings, rather. And the reason they like you to look at those as priority sites is because you can share a lot of you have a lot of efficiencies with an existing school building, right? You potentially have efficiencies associated with transportation, potentially efficiencies with just plowing in the winter, in the morning, right? You can get those sites plowed pretty quickly, but also with utilities, etc. So that's why we looked at this site, but this site was not going to work for us. So in the end, we determined that there was a number of sites in the Benton area that were viable candidates. They met all the criteria. They were safe sites, they had access, they were 20+ acres, they had water, they had sewer, they had 3-phase power. Roberta put out multiple calls for people to contact her if they were interested in selling their land. I don't think you actually got any responses to that. Scott Washburn did that.
No response.
Yeah. So then we actually went through and contacted the owners of these properties directly to see if they'd be interested in selling any of their land. And we ended up with one interested seller, and that's a parcel of land adjacent to the Benton School. So we have 25 acres, 25+ acres. These landowners are willing to sell this parcel of land. It's adjacent to the Benton School, so it does fit that criteria from the Department of Education as a magnet site. We've discussed the site with the Department of Education, and one of the things that they have indicated to us that they'd be open to is, because it's a magnet site to the Benton School, they would be open to the possibility of us using the project funds to redevelop some of the site access and site circulation issues on the Benton property. So we know that on Benton, I was at the school yesterday and I listened to the dismissal process, and we know that at Benton they have to release the walkers and release the pickups and then release the bus, because they can't have all of those people on the site at the same time. Because the bus pickup and the parent pickup and the walkers, it's all a little bit of a jumble, right, Brian? So they have a very organized system for how they dismiss kids. But typically, we like to have a better site circulation, a better separation of bus and parent drop-off and pick-up, so that it's just a safer and cleaner site. And that's something that the Department of Education has indicated they'd be open to us addressing with a magnet site like this one here. So then the next steps that we're going to do on that particular site is our due diligence. We're going to review it with the Maine Department of Environmental Protection. We have met with the Department of Transportation to look at traffic. We will be looking at a traffic impact study if we add vehicle access and more trips to that location. We'll be looking at a geotechnical assessment, environmental assessment, topographic and boundary surveys, and ultimately we'll look at the development costs of that site. Then we'll look at doing a test fit of what a building, how a building might fit on that site, how site circulation might actually work. And like I said, we'll develop a cost estimate for that site. And all of that work has to happen so that we can demonstrate and prove that this is a good, viable site for this project, that this is something that the cost to develop it is within reason, that the site circulation will work, that the traffic will work. We'll also look at how it will impact Benton itself and what the bus circulation will be, what the parent circulation will be, what the walker circulation will be. And then all of that gets put together in the site application to the state, and it goes to the voters here. Yes, you have a question?
Considering the schools being so close together for security reasons, I know a couple years ago there was sadly a suicide in the Benton parking lot. Is security going to be kind of upgraded for the schools to be a little safer for the community?
Yeah, so I know that the district is already looking at improving the security at Benton and improving the public access to the building, like making sure that the office is closer to the main entry. And the overall site security and approach and cameras, et cetera, of that site will be part of the project, yeah.
I have one more question.
Mhm.
I know a lot of the behavioral students were being bused to Benton Elementary not too long ago. I'm not sure if that program is still going on. But I'm just wondering if we're going to be combining, which is a great idea, the younger kids into an older situation, how that will really work out for protecting our young kids as well.
Do you mean the behavior program itself?
Yes.
So we haven't actually worked that out yet. We're still working through what programs will be in which building, and that's a collaborative process with the district and the special education department of the school district to make sure we're doing the right thing.
I
Yeah.
know they were shutting down like halls for those kids to be safe and other kids to be safe too, of course. But I wasn't too sure if that was in the makeup of, the plans. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So this kind of recaps what the charge was again: consolidation options, site search. We looked at reusing Benton, reloading it with pre-K through 2, building a new building for 3-6. We went through from 19 sites to 10 sites, it's 10 plus the one owned by the district, to one willing seller. So we have a viable site that meets all the criteria that the building committee put forward. And so that's the status of where we are right now, and we're doing our due diligence on the site. Meanwhile, there are other things happening in the background as well. I've started meeting with some of the staff to kind of get their impressions of where we are with education and understand what works for them, what's not working for them. And that's an ongoing process. That's just beginning. We'll continue to meet with staff and continue to get their input. And so in the overall process, I just wanted to remind you kind of where we are again. Over here is where we start construction, step 20. So we're still in the early phases, so I don't want anyone to get concerned that we are jumping the gun and moving too fast or anything like that. There's a long way to go before we start construction. There's a long way to go, a lot of involvement with like I said, the staff, the community. There's still a lot of process to go through. And I think that, and the Department of Education is still participating with us as well as we move forward. So that's our update. Are there any other questions or comments? Yes?
I, as a kindergarten teacher, have been kind of getting involved in our school for kind of how things are going. We really learned first, so this was very helpful. We were really hopeful. We actually wrote a little statement. Is that okay if I first to read it?
Yes.
Thinking as this comes to shape, if that's okay. So we said, we as some of the district's early childhood educators are reaching out to implore that we as a district and community consider using the incredible gift and opportunity of a brand new school to fill an existing need or gap that exists in our district in regards to resources for and emphasis on our earliest learners. In our professional opinion, reaching our children as soon as we possibly can with as many suitable interventions and supports as possible will by far make the most impact on the community and district as a whole. Such a facility to appropriately prioritize this age group does not, in our beliefs, currently exist within our district, being that this population of students has the most specific and unique needs when it comes to providing a suitable learning environment. Providing a space where we are able to meet these distinct needs is essential to the success of all learners in our community, since, as we know, early intervention is crucial. In an effort to weigh in on the potential scenario in which the community chooses to build a new school centered around an an older age group, we would like to candidly kind of share some of our concerns, the most pertinent being the classroom size. We are a little bit leery of knowing the Benton classroom sizes and what we do need and do day to day, and what the kids need for space and furniture and manipulatives and materials, movement, naps in some cases. I think is taken into consideration as well logistically. So we were hopeful for that as well. We just want to, make sure that we are expressing our true thoughts and professional opinions on this, just to be sure we're doing our due diligence and striving to make the community a better place and to reach the young students that we're charged with educating. So we just wanted our voices to be heard on that. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. In terms of class sizes, I would like to respond to that really quickly. The Department of Education uses, they loosely use a metric of about 35 square feet per student for first grade up. But they use about 50 square feet. That's the rule of thumb that we use, is 50 square feet per student for the pre-K and kindergarten. So we recognize that the younger kids need a lot more space. And you'll, when I was talking about roughly 16 kids per classroom, that takes those 600, 500 to 600 to 700 square foot classrooms and divides them by that 35 or 50 square feet per student. So what we've done is we've loaded the classrooms with an appropriate number of students based on their size. So that we're recognizing the fact that younger kids do need more space, and their staff needs more space, and the programs that you guys do needs more space. So that is something that we take into consideration. So I'm glad you said something. Yeah.
So following that, I have a big voice, so.
Okay.
So following that probably means we would need many more teachers, right? Because Fairfield Primary has 6 teachers, but when they come to Benton, where it was designed for 16, but I'm a first grade teacher, it's rarely been 16, it's been up to 21. We would need more teachers. And I guess I just want to say that in front of the board and everyone, because that's my concern. 16 sounds great, but I've been there for 31 years, and it's really never 16. We started at 20 this year, because we have less teachers.
Right.
So I just want all the board members, anyone that's on that committee, to remember that's an increase, in staff, which I don't know how that calculates into all of this when we rebuild the building? Is our district paying for more staff? Because then we're gonna be the brunt of it again. When those early learners don't get what they need because we don't have the staff because our district can't afford it. I understand the buildings may get paid for, but I don't know how the staffing works.
Yeah, so we're still working through that. Those are great questions because they are something that needs to be addressed by the district. So what we're doing is we are demonstrating right now what works in the building, like you said, and then the district will work through. And we've given sort of staff counts as well as part of. We will be giving staff counts as part of this process, and then that will be something that the district will look at. Perfect. Thank you so much for the opportunity to update you and share with you what all the work the building committee's been doing.
Thank you, Kathy. And I'm just going to take a minute to remind the group who serves on the building committee. It's Ray Davis Folsom, Billy Joe Brown Woods, Roy White, Sarah Williams, Terry Knowles, Neil Caverly, myself, Scott Washburn, and our architects, Kathy Cohen and Alan Cunningham from CHA. And I appreciate all these questions, and these are to be addressed as part of the process. As Kathy's pointed out, we're in the very initial stages, and tonight's presentation is about moving forward. We've done this legwork and looking at, as the board charged this committee with the task on March 18th, there was a motion to authorize and direct the building committee to proceed with consolidation, school construction, project options. And we have spent a good deal of time working through what the scenarios are, and we put the architects through the paces of looking at the existing facility that we are meant to reuse, that the Department of Education and the school construction team that we're working with, led by Scott Brown, insist that we use it to its maximum and most efficient capacity. And that's what we've done. And we've also taken into consideration some of the programming that we want to ensure is available for our families and our students down the road. Like, for example, universal pre-K. That is beginning to take hold at a national level, but it's a local level for us, and degree that we're able to subsidize it with Title I aid funds. And we work with our partner, Katie Tapp. So this year we have pre-K programming in our school buildings, with the exception of Benton School because it's offered at Fairfield Primary, and they're day-long programs, which is a huge step forward to serve our children and our families. So when we were looking 5 years down the road, what would we need for capacity to offer universal pre-K, which we don't have right now. We have, there are limits to capacity that Katie Cap can offer us. And it is also a Head Start program. But we're looking at those enrollment studies and trying to project out how many 4-year-olds will be in our school district, and potentially if every single family sent their 4-year-old child to pre-K, could we serve them in the Benton facility? Also looking at our child care programming for 3-year-olds. We've had many conversations about what we would anticipate that would best serve families, say, 4 or 5 years down the road when this project comes to fruition. So those are some of the considerations. And size of the classrooms in the building. And Sandra, to your point, the state will build the facility, but the community will support and subsidize, along with a heavy hand in state subsidy. We get our state allocation to subsidize our educational programs. What can we sustain for those ratios? And we know those ratios are important, and the lower the better, that children are best served. So that's all part of, I think Kathy used the matrix of building a building and staffing it sufficiently so that programming best serves students. So The other question that I heard come up, and there'll be plenty more opportunities. This is the infancy of the project. It's just trying to move ahead and engage in a process. It's called the educational specifications. It's something that requires interviewing a variety of stakeholders, not just the staff who serve in the building, but family, community, municipals. And we look at all the other pieces that go into the context of what a schoolhouse functions as and serves. School safety is certainly part of it. There's a whole arm of the inspects process that deals with that site circulation and trying to make the place safer. It was, I think, a huge help to us that we hear from Scott Brown and his team that they are willing, they being using state monies to help with some of the issues of site circulation at Benton. If anyone's been there at dismissal or drop off in the morning, there are a lot of people, a lot of vehicles in the space. And in new builds, bus routes and family drop-offs don't happen in the same space anymore. So the state is willing to help us with redefining that and crafting it so it's safer. So for the board, just to be reminded that the state is going to subsidize this. They also have requirements and there are specifications about what needs to go in the building and the capacity, the real estate, the classroom size that they will be willing to subsidize for certain grade levels. And I would encourage you to look at the State Department of Education school construction site. It has all these materials, and we also have them on our website. So, are there questions that the board has of the committee or Kathy, or are there committee members that wish to share some information from their work on the committee so far?
This is the first time I've heard of the project since last year when you guys came, and I just want to say, what a great opportunity for the district to have the Department of Education funding this project for our district. It is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I think looking at this very closely is very important. And the work that the committee has done has obviously been great so far. I just had a question about the square footage per student. So the metric for the state of Maine is 35 square feet for older kids and 50 square feet for the younger children. That's typically what we try to do.
So they actually do a square foot per student for the entire building. They use a larger number for 550 students times X number of square feet for the entire building, and so that includes all of your accessory spaces, all of your corridors, custodial closets, everything. The metric that we use, the 35 and the 50, that's sort of best practices, and that's sort of what it comes out to if you do the math the other way, from the bottom up or from the top down, the Department of Education metrics.
Okay. I was just questioning with the goal of a universal pre-K and a child care program, and maybe something maybe an ideal world, bigger square footage for younger kids. Has there been any thought to using it for the older kids, the 3 to 6, and having a new compound for the younger children? If all these programs are going to be needed there.
Right.
Just a thought. I just
Right.
that's been talked about.
And it has, and part of it is how very small those Benton classrooms are. And if you stepped into the building on any given day and looked at, and irrespective of a section of 22 fifth graders in the classroom or even 16, that they are, the bigger bodies don't ideally fit into the space.
And you're saying that some of the Benton classrooms can be expanded?
They're movable vertical dividers?
I
Yes.
just wanted to ask you about the contract.
Are there any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to remind people, that the building committee meets on the second Monday of every month, and it is open to the public for people who want. It's just like these meetings, and we allow citizen input, and can give input on things, so a lot of people I don't think are aware of that, so I just wanted people to know that we meet on the second Monday here every month. Except, I'm not sure about next week, because Monday is a holiday, so.
With the exception of holidays.
Yes, okay.
I just want to say, I'm part of the committee too, and the building committee. I've been around building for a long time, longer than a lot of people have been alive in this room. It's a very deliberate process we're going through. Kathy keeps us on track. We can't skip anything. And I think what people, several questions that were raised here tonight, I think, get into when we're talking about the ed specs. That's going to give us a lot more information on the program. So we take what the ed specs call for. We even may have some opportunities if we can justify them to start some new programs. And I think that's where the creative thinking will really start. And I think it will just be a process that we all can support when it's done. I think to this point, it's very, very logical, the moves that we've made. And with that said, I'm prepared to make a motion. I move to accept the recommendations of the building committee to proceed with the development of a consolidated school construction project that will include reprogramming the existing Benton Elementary School building for consolidations of grade pre-K through grade 2 school programs and construct a new school for the consolidated grade 3 through grade 6 school program.
It has been moved and seconded. It has been moved by Terry and seconded by Neil to accept the recommendation of the building committee to proceed with the development of a consolidated school construction project that will include reprogramming the existing Benton Elementary School building for a consolidated grade pre-K through grade 2 school program and construction of a new school building for a consolidated grade 3 through grade 6 school program. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstained? 1. Passes. Moving on, early release on October 29th, 2021.
I'm recommending that the board approves an early release day. I've been in conversation with our Teachers Association. We were talking about some needs and some time, particularly in working with secondary students as the quarter's closing, looking at the credit at risk. Kids may be in for not being on track, and it would give teachers an opportunity to connect with them, say virtually, and catch up with them or communicate with them about getting materials in, work done before the quarter officially closes. And I'm certain that elementary teachers could also use some time for planning and preparing materials to address some of our students in quarantine in particular. So I recommend that the board adopt an early release for this month on the 29th. It's a Friday.
I do have a question. Is this going to interrupt anything with the main tech center for high school students?
For the afternoon program, it may.
Okay.
But we are within that range of days where we can deviate, so it'll be the PM program.
Okay, yeah. I think that's where my question is going. Does anyone have any other questions for Roberta on this? Is there a motion to accept the change in the school calendar to have an early release date on October 29th of 2021? It's been moved by Joel, seconded by Melissa to adopt an early release day on October 29th, 2021. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? 10. All those opposed? Abstained. Resignations, there are none. Appointments. Is there a motion to approve Alice Hammond as Lawrence High School guidance counselor?
So moved.
Been moved by Terry, seconded by Melissa to approve Alice Hammond as Lawrence High School guidance counselor. Is there any discussion or is there some background?
Just a little bit of background. This is a guidance position at Lawrence High School. Alice Hammond received her BA in psychology from New England College and a master's in school counseling from the University of Maine. In her experience, she's worked as a school counselor at Marble Junior High School for 22 years.
So this is a lateral move, she's moving from Waterville to
Yeah, Marble Junior High. It's her experience, but this is a high school counseling position, yes.
All those in favor? 10. Opposed? Abstained? All right. there any other committee reports? Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Danielle. I just wanted to update the board on a discussion that the board had at our last meeting in regard to students in quarantine and the academic support and contact with their teachers. And I have clarified with each of the building principals that, and as we discussed, Danielle and I with the Teachers Association just prior to the opening of school, that there is grades 3 through 12, a web-based platform. Google is the platform that's being utilized to share assignments. In the secondary, students are invited in to participate in synchronous classroom discussion, those students who are in quarantine. And also at the elementaries, I believe many of the teachers are offering that live interaction, but certainly the assignments are there in the Google forum, and the younger the children are, probably the more the challenge is to get a full participation. And with grades K through 2, there are packets being generated, so it's to this specifically is to address students who are out of school due to illness or quarantine. The other piece I wanted to touch on and update are the cases in schools since we've opened. And I've asked at the school level, what I publish on the webpage and send to an email to staff, and then we follow up with a robocall, is to notify the public when there is a positive case in a school building, and to relate to the public how many students and staff are quarantined. And in a discussion earlier, what does quarantine mean? Well, in the CDC, it means that you remove yourself from contact from others. In regard to what it means for school building, it means that an individual identified as a close contact needing to quarantine cannot come into the school building, the workplace if you're an employee, or to the school building if you're a student. And we are following the CDC guidelines for that as we've established and discussed. But to date, and this was when this graph was generated for me yesterday morning. I will just go through the schools, the number of cases, the close contacts identified, and then distill down from that, out of those close contacts identified, the number of students who, and this is just for students who needed to quarantine, who be excluded from school. And the CDC is also asking that we were obligated to notify all the close contacts, even though they may be exempt from quarantining due to the vaccination status, or the individual has had COVID in the past 90 days, or the individual is participating in pool testing. So Albion School, 2 cases, 25 close contacts, with 22 needing to quarantine. In Benton Elementary, 10 cases, 94 close contacts, 63 needing to quarantine. Clinton Elementary, 13 positive cases, 135 close contacts, with 73 of those, 135 needing to quarantine. Fairfield Primary, 3 cases, 20 close contacts, 20 needing to quarantine. Lawrence Junior High School, 14 cases, 143 close contacts, with 80 of those 143 needing to quarantine. In Lawrence High School, 30 cases, 495 close contacts, with 243 needing to quarantine. And then, of course, it's those quarantine numbers that are concerning, and so are the positive cases as well. And the cases started to come in just as soon as we open school this year. And one of the things that building principals and our nurses have worked hard on is encouraging the pool testing, because in large part it exempts a person in a circumstance in the classroom from quarantining. So I will just share with you the pool testing percentages by building, and this is just for students participating in pool testing. The state offers this free to us, and certainly staff are eligible to participate. So in Albion, we have 33% of the students enrolled participating in the pool testing. In Benton, 56% of the students enrolled are participating in pool testing. Clinton, 55% are participating in pool testing. Fairfield Primary, 39%. Junior high school, 29%, and Lawrence High School, 32% are participating in pool testing. And again, as a reminder, that is upon the consent of the parent, and that consent can be withdrawn at any time and also initiated at any time. But it does allow an avenue to return to school despite being identified as a close contact. And what we understand is that so the pool those samples are taken weekly, and they are sensitive enough to detect the virus or the presence of the virus way before symptoms, but with a low viral load, low enough to catch a person before they become contagious. And if there is a positive pool, and we've had positive pools, there's further testing done through the nurse's office. And again, the parent would consent to that with the Binax test. And we're starting to see some of that come through, and we have some pending cases at the high school right now that the staff are going through contact tracing. So right now, the cases are continuing to climb, and I don't know what's around the corner. I'm hopeful that they will stabilize and begin to drop, but I don't know what the trajectory is going to be. I'm just reporting to you what's occurring right now.
Thank you, Roberta.
Yes, sure.
Does anyone?
Yeah, Roberta, you had mentioned, we see these numbers here. I noticed they're lower at the junior high and high school. You mentioned that parents can opt in at any time. Is there an active campaign to let people know of this? If we definitely have a goal of sustainability of stakeholders, it seems to be working.
Yeah, thank you. We did, and of course the information is all on our website, and I've had Deanna Turlo speak to the public and the board a few times, but a few weekends ago, I was here with high school administration, faced with 156, I think, close contacts identified, and working through that list and trying to find an avenue. So initially the forms were paper forms, and sometimes things get lost in the shuffle from school to home to back again. So we worked on making the document live on the website and sent out a robocall, letting people know that the document was on live and it could be completed without a person having to go back and forth, so it would be immediate. And we have that information, so it's helpful to the nurses when they go through. When a person's a close contact, and the nurses go individually and go through a script and identifying first, identifying the contact, not the individual named, when that occurred, and also going through the other exemptions of, is your child vaccinated, is your child participating in pool testing, and so forth. So an active campaign, it is an avenue out of the quarantining that's required. Are there any other questions? Thank you. Another thing that I wanted to mention, just one more thing, because it did come up at our building committee committee, and I've included, you see the Dirigo State of Maine logo on this. These are the costs associated thus far to date with the preliminary work that we're doing in this school construction project. And as a reminder, we had a capital reserve fund that was set aside by warrant, and it was released by warrant on a budget referendum. And that is money that we will use toward the preliminary costs of the work that's being done now by the architectural and engineering firm. Some examples of the geotechnical services and surveying that we're going to do on some property, the appraisals that are required. And the reason why it has the state logo in this very official looking form here is that the Department of Ed school construction team looks at every invoice and either accepts it or rejects it, because ultimately the district will be reimbursed. These are all costs included with the state subsidy of the school construction project. So this money will be reimbursed to us down the road. And I did mention to you that there are a few costs associated with the project so far, and those were costs to mainly facilitate the public forum events. We recorded them, we paid a person to be here, record them, put them up on live. We spent some money on mailings, communication. We did a bulk mailing of postcards to let the public know. We put ads in the paper for those public forum events. And the only other ad that wasn't covered was when we put out an RFQ, a request for qualifications, when we were trying to identify an architectural and engineering firm to begin their work with us. But to date, most of this is reimbursable as part of the school construction costs. Thank you.
Roberta, I assume those zeros on that form indicate things to come. Is that
Right. These are the allowable costs.
Thank you.
And it is Valerie on the state construction team who looks at this, all our invoices carefully and accepts them or rejects them.
Any other questions? Thank you, Roberta, for your report. Moving on to other business. 2021-2022 co-curricular directors, advisors, and coaches. There's no motion necessary. Yearbook, Megan Perkins, Drama High School, Haley Pomelo. Step Production, High School, Haley Pomelo. Senior Class Advisor, Dan Ness. Senior Class Advisor, Sam Van Tynen. Junior Class Advisor, Kathy Stockburn. Junior Class Advisor, Tristan Stockburn. Sophomore Class Advisor, Becky Jenkins. Sophomore Class Advisor, Sam Van Tynen. Freshman Class Advisor, Heather Lee Clark. Freshman Class Advisor, Samantha Van Hoyt. Newspaper Spectrum Co-Advisor, Tanya Mueller. Newspaper Spectrum Co-Advisor, Allison Hoff. Math Team, Samantha Van Hoyt. Future Business Leaders of America, Co-Advisor Dan Janess. Future Business Leaders of America, Co-Advisor Margot Poole. Speech Coach, Kaylee Pomelo. National Honor Society Advisor, Sarah Hebert. Marching Band Advisor, Brittany Janess. Cut Band Director, Lauren Fields. Jazz Band Director, Brittany Janess. Lawrence High School, Lawrence Junior High School Course Director, Renee Meisner. Show Choir Director, Renee Meisner. Color Guard Co-Instructor, Lisa Gadway. Color Guard Co-Instructor, Daniel Foreman. Percussion Instructor, Co-Instructor, Shane Cloutier. Percussion Instructor, Co-Instructor, Sam Harris. Drill Instructor, Russell Caverly. Piano Accompanist, Randy Salisbury. Pride Club Advisor, Elon Furman. Pride Club conflict of interest statement is information only. Board member, Joel Bouchard, T-Mobile, Danielle Wooten, RSU 18, and it needs to be updated and edited, Friends of Veselonsky. Billy Joe Brown Woods, interview Kickstart LLC, and Misty Brook, Organic Farm. Neil Caverly, Caverly Farms LLC, Ray Davis Folsom, Waterville Public Schools. Katrina Dumont, personalities, hairstyles, Rachel Hashi, self-employed. Beth Lambert, State of Maine, Melissa Mishu, Redmond Fairview General Hospital, Roy White, Schools Plumbing, Sarah Williams, we are missing 2 board members. Terry Knowles.
He was retired.
And Heather Hussey. We'll have that updated. Thank you, guys. Before we adjourn, there is one other thing in your board packet tonight. The MSAD annual fall conference. For board members who have not attended, this is all done virtual now. This is the second year that it's done virtual. But there are a lot of clinics and keynote speakers that give a lot of information to board members. I participated last year virtually,